One out and one on. Here's Guillorme. 2-2 coming. Right back to the mound. Leiter to second. Morel on to first, and the ball game is over, and the Cubs have swept a 3-game series from the Mets as the Cubs come into New York and hand the Mets their 5th consecutive home loss, and the Mets lead remains at a half game over the Braves with 18 games left to play in the season.
Here is Tim Britton, he of The Athletic. Help us out with the Mets. Timmy, this is very surprising. I understand that baseball, you never know, it's unpredictable. Anybody can beat anybody else. But if you would have told me that they would have lost 7 games in 4 series to Washington, Pittsburgh, Miami, and the Cubs, I wouldn't have believed you. And that's where they are in right now. Issues for the Mets? Let me get a summation from you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, for so much of August, while Atlanta was on the Mets' heels, what they looked at for New York was, well, hey, you've got that September schedule where you're playing a lot of teams under 500 and teams pretty far below 500, like you mentioned in the Nats, Pirates, the Cubs, 20 games below 500, that you could get fat on. And the Mets just haven't been able to do that. They've been playing some of their worst baseball of the season, really, and it really boils down to what their offense has done. We've seen them go through a stretch like this earlier in the season in the month of June when they were the lowest scoring offense in baseball, in the National League. And it's, an offense that doesn't hit a lot of home runs. Their league average are just below in home run hitting this season. They need to sequence their hits together. They need to hit with runners in scoring position. They need to have ground balls go through the holes. That hasn't happened really for the last month now, where they're averaging an even 4 runs per game over the last 32.
Yeah, major issues, and they miss Marte in the worst way, Tim. I mean, they can't afford not having him in that lineup. I'm not sure exactly what his status did. I don't think he played last night, right? He's still out with that issue with the finger. What can you tell me about him for a sec? Let me hear.
Yeah, he's still on the injured list. Starling Marte has been such a consistent producer for them in the number 2 spot in the order. Their top 4 this season, Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, and Pete Alonso, they've hit that same order almost every game since the start of May. And that's been the key to their offense, is having those 4 guys hitting the way they have. And Marte had really picked it up in the second half of the season. He's had a really good season all around, an all-star. In the second half, he'd add a little bit more power to that. And so when you lose a hitter of that caliber, that just makes it a little harder for everyone else to click around them. They've had to shuffle the lineup more than they've had to at other points this season. This is really the first time they've had a key position player on the injured list for an extended period of time. They've lost guys here and there. They lost James McCann for a while, but he's been their number 9 hitter at the catcher spot. They've been remarkably healthy from a position player standpoint, especially for this franchise. And the Marte injury has come at a really tough time for them.
A hard deal, no question. Scherzer, I know he's going to pitch on Monday. Do we expect full bore? Any kind of limitations? They're going to need him in these last 3-4 regular season starts, and they're going to need him pitching well in Atlanta there when they go to Truist Park the last weekend of the season. What can you tell me about Scherzer right now? Let me hear.
Yeah, he threw 3 2/3 innings for AAA Syracuse last night. So I would not expect him to be going 7 innings and 110 pitches in his outing Monday in Milwaukee. But, he'll build up to that pretty quickly, I would imagine, and be ready, especially for that start in Atlanta, the final weekend of the season. For most of the season, the guys who have filled in for Scherzer and DeGrom, Tyler McGill, David Peterson, Trevor Williams have pitched really well for them. Peterson, these last 2 starts, and especially last night against the Cubs, just didn't have it. And the Mets have lost both of those games. So that's been a loss at a key time to lose a guy like of Scherzer's caliber, to have him back in the rotation and hopefully have kind of the guys behind him in DeGrom, Bassett, Walker, and Carrasco, who've all pitched well for long stretches of the season, but haven't pitched their best of late. Having those guys kind of in line behind them should help them moving forward.
100%. And I think, listen, there are a lot of reasons why they have to win the division. We all know it. I think the biggest one is psychological. The Braves, listen, they're the Braves. They won a World Championship. They've been a playoff participant. They're handled if they're in the wild card. The Mets, if they ever lost the division, they have to be in first place all year and then have to go through a very tricky gauntlet. And they're dominated by 2 pitchers who they'd have to pitch in the wild card round, which would compromise them down the road. I think it's imperative that the Mets win the division. And I don't feel the same way about Atlanta. What's your take on that for a sec? Let me hear.
Yeah, this is a Mets team that there is postseason experience on the roster, but not with the Mets. The only guy who's on the roster who has played in a postseason game for the New York Mets is Jacob DeGrom. No one else has been in a postseason game for them. So I think, given the way they have led the division basically all season, it's 2 days they haven't been in first place, and it was 12 hours last week where they were They're a half game behind Atlanta. I think it is kind of psychologically important for them to hold on. And, you might like their odds in a wild card series against San Diego, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, whoever gets that number 5 seed in the National League. But it really does hinder your chances of going any farther than that, because you'd have to go to LA for a division series. You wouldn't have DeGrom and Scherzer available to you for 4 starts in a 5-game series, or three starts in a 5-game series. So I think, if you're imagining a path for the Mets to win the National League pennant, it doesn't start in the wild card series. It starts with a bye and a division series, maybe against St. Louis or someone like that, before you have to play either LA or Atlanta instead of both.
100%, Tim. Right on top of it. Great job. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Appreciate you coming on here today.
Oh, anytime. Thanks for having me.